Welcome to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, Assistant Director at the B.B. Comer Library, and we just want to thank you so much for being with us today and joining us for this episode. We're so grateful to the TV station here for allowing us this time to interview people in our community that tie into what we do at the library, that we think are beneficial, that have information that you need to know about. And so we're just grateful. On behalf of the staff and the board, we thank the TV station and we thank you for joining us. Today our guest is Barry Curtis, and he's a familiar face here in Sylacauga. Probably doesn't even need an introduction. But we want to talk to Barry today because we have an interesting topic. It's elder care issues. And you're an elder care attorney, and a lot of people may not have realized that.
Well, I am. I went back to school like a midlife crisis, and I just decided that maybe we need a little help around here with that.
Well, and in your family background, you have a point of contact with your business, with Curtis and Son Funeral Home, that I'm sure has opened your eyes to the need for this. And so tell a little bit about your family and how the funeral home, how long it's been in Sylacauga and what kind of things you saw that maybe led you on this path.
Sure. Well, the funeral business, my family, my dad started the funeral business back in the early 70s. We were downtown in what we called our South Chapel, and it's now the doctor's offices, so things have changed a little bit. But I've been in the funeral business my whole life, and I would say that I'm a funeral director first and decided that I would go back to law school, so I do consider myself probably more a funeral director than an attorney. But dealing with families through the years, my dad passed down the trade that he had to me. It's a family business, and he retired in the 90s. He's still very active in the background a little bit, but we've just been dealing with families for years. We had a lot of questions through the years from families that we just didn't have the answers, and a lot of it dealt with planning ahead. Pre-need funerals came into existence in the 70s. We remember watching it on TV, a commercial that the Birmingham funeral homes were starting prearranged funerals. And my dad said, nobody's ever going to give you their money before they pass away. But he was wrong. And so planning ahead became something in the funeral industry that people looked to do. It was financially a good move because they were able to freeze prices. Retirement couples felt like they were really setting things up for their children and taking a burden away from their children. So I think the planning, even in this estate planning and the elder care law that we're talking about, I think that's the basis for it, is that the parents want to make sure they take that burden away from their children. And so that's kind of how things evolved, and the families that we've dealt with through the years at Curtis and Son Funeral Home are the same families that we're dealing with now with the elder care law. So it goes hand in hand.
I think we know that when you're in the middle of a crisis, and most of the time you don't plan on a crisis.
That's correct.
You don't make the best judgments, the best decisions. And so what you're saying about the planning, I think that's such a gift that a family could leave to their children, is to have some things taken care of. And the point of contact that you have with people when they come in to plan a funeral or to come in and pre-plan a funeral, they have to have some paperwork with them. They have to be able to put their hands on some information that is not always readily available for some people.
That's correct. We have at the funeral home, and I know that it's a document that's out there or a work product, but we have a planning guide that is just a quick flyby that gives families kind of some direction that they might want to go to get their things in order. But I think it's just meant to kind of bring attention to it. Really, usually they give me a call and we sit down for a fancy term, a consultation, but they just come and we talk. And I explain the importance of each one of these things that they've read about or heard about or at their coffee group somebody was talking about. And, you know, everybody's circumstances are different.
Absolutely.
Some people need it way more than others, and some people just want it as a peace of mind. So it's no different than anything else. Everybody's family dynamics are different. You never can go wrong to plan ahead. Sometimes that's not a comfortable thing to do, but in your estate planning, it's a necessity if you can get yourself to that mindset that you want to get those things taken care of.
I know our family had a little experience with doing a prepaid for one of our family members, and when my mom came to me and talked to me about it and said, I think this would be good, it just, you know, it's like you said, it's sort of an uncomfortable conversation to have, because it's not as though you are anticipating someone to die.
Right.
It's just that you're trying to make things as easy as they can be when you're in a bad situation.
My grandmother, my mom's mom, she decided she wanted to prearrange her funeral, and I tell this story a lot. We own the funeral home. We wouldn't have to pay for her funeral, but her generation wants to take care of their obligations. They don't want anybody else taking care of their obligations, and she's since passed, but she sent in $100 a month payments for 4 years, and when she passed away, we honored her wishes, and then I gave my mom the money back. But when we were going through my grandmother's things, we found an envelope. We mailed back the receipts. She had 48 $100 receipts, and that's just her generation. Mine and your generation might not quite be the same as commitment to that, but their generation meant they want to take care of their own obligations and being prepared. And that's a little different nowadays, but still, that's what she did. So being prepared helps.
Well, this was my grandfather, and he's 91, and so he has not used his yet.
That's,
but it is that mindset
yes.
Of the older generation that anything we can do to make plans ahead and make it easier for our kids and our grandkids, we want to do that. And
sure.
So I think prepaid is a wonderful way to start on that path of getting things in order.
Yes.
Now, when you were sitting there doing consultations before you went back and got your degree, I know people ask you questions about insurance and benefits, and once you decided to go back and actually get a degree in elder care law, did you sit in class some nights and think, oh, that's the answer to that question? Did you learn things that you didn't know, or did it just clarify a lot of things for you?
I think it really opened the doors. It got me to get past the stigma of a legal question. And one of the most disturbing things that I found out about legal questions are you can't find an answer. There's always different circumstances. So if you think you're just going to go to page whatever and read the answer, you're not. It's different variables. And so I think what the law school part did for me was to let me understand the legal barriers and why they're there. And then you kind of have to go out and find what's best for each family, you know, because everybody is different. So it gave me a foundation.
So every answer is a customized answer for
I
a
would
family.
think so, yes. Now some of them can overlap a little bit, and a lot of us have a lot of the same circumstances. We have children, we want to make sure they're taken care of if something happens, those kind of things. But at the end of the day, when we talk to retirees, for instance, everybody's a little different. They're just in a different place, so you kind of have to be flexible.
Well, we've got some good information for you. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk some more with Barry Curtis.
Hey y'all, Jim Green from TV47. You can now catch us on the internet. We're streaming live at TV47.tv. All of our great programming, whether it's Daybreak with Jimmy Dale, Matt Coulter, and Around the Track with Matt, or I'll be on with Coosa Valley Magazine, and a whole lot more too, right here at TV47, now at TV47.tv on the internet. Whatever device, you can watch us right there at TV47.tv.
What do you see? What do you see now? Hunters are required to wear 144 square inches of hunter orange during Alabama's gun deer season. See the difference? Hunter orange saves lives. Wear it. This message brought to you by the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and this station.
Hey, Sylacauga! I'm Dr. Gina, and I want you to join me live every weeknight, Monday through Friday, right here on Channel 47 on the world's first social television show. And it's going to be all about you, whether it's presidential politics or Deflategate. If it's trending, we're going to be talking about it. I want you to join me live every Monday through Friday on Channel 47. Don't miss it. America Trends with Dr. Gina, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. right here on Channel 47. See you then.
Welcome back to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, and today we're talking with Barry Curtis, and we're talking to Barry about elder care law and issues surrounding things that may come up when you're dealing with an elderly family member. And you and I have been talking a little bit. I just had some stats. I said I'm going to throw these out just to highlight the fact of, you know, what's going on, what's causing a crisis with long-term health care, because we know that that is a big issue, and it's something that, and I'm going to let you talk about it, but with baby boomers coming up, there's a lot of issues with long-term health care. But one of the things that I thought was so interesting is it said there are over 5 million Americans that are living with Alzheimer's disease, and that doesn't even include patients with dementia. And that out of that there are 15.5 million Americans that are providing care for these family members that have Alzheimer's and dementia, which adds up to a total of care hours being provided is 17.7 billion hours of care being provided by people for their family members, their loved ones that have, and this is just Alzheimer's and dementia. And there's certainly other things that would cause somebody to need to go into long-term care. And, you know, we've just had a little experience with that. Our family personally has, and there's a lot that goes into making plans for that.
Well, long-term care, you made a mention of the baby boomers. I was born in '62, so I am right at the end of the baby boomers. And so there is a large influx of that generation. And we're talking a lot of numbers. And I think that's reflected in your statistics, that those baby boomers at the front of it are already increasing those numbers. And long-term care, and we're talking about, that's just terminology for the nursing home sometimes. And it's a very complicated process. When you talk about someone's long-term care, you usually are talking about in the home, which is usually a short term. You just can't keep that pace up, and I know we talked about that a little bit. And then you're talking about a nursing home facility, and you really only have 2 or 3 ways to pay for that. And one way would be that you can get long-term care insurance. I don't know how feasible that is for some families because the cost, and you naturally could private pay for someone to go to the nursing home, or you could apply for services through Medicaid long-term care, to where they would assist families in that loved one going to the nursing home. Not to give numbers for facilities, but an average, you're talking of over $6,000 a month for long-term care in a facility. So you're talking big business. I mean, you're talking a lot of dollars.
The long-term care insurance, is that a pre-planned, anticipated thing that you pay for years ahead of time, or is that something that you wait when you need it, you take it out?
Well, you can't wait,
once you need
because it's kind of like life insurance. It's the same parameter. If you wait till a stage of your life at the end to go be prepared to buy life insurance, you can't afford the premiums, or either you can't qualify for the policy. Long-term care being the same. You would start it early, and you would pay continuously. And one of the things that I would have seen is that it's for X amount of years, and it pays X amount of dollars per day. And I think there'll be all kinds of policies out there, but the cost factor of those would determine if you could do that or not. And here you are raising a family, sending kids to college. How can you fit in that premium for your long-term care, something that you think you might not need for 40 more years? So it's just a tough question.
And you know, just what we touched on earlier with the planning ahead part, a lot of times, and I know in our specific example with our family, people kept saying, you know, get on the waiting list, you know, because we were involved with the VA situation,
yes.
You know, get on the waiting list. And it's kind of like the prepaid funeral. It's just something you hate to think about, and then when you need it and you haven't planned ahead, then you just kind of get.
It's probably just as tough for families to plan for long-term care. They've always said, I'm not going to let my mom go to the nursing home. I'm going to take care of my mom, and sure, I would want to be able to do the same thing. But then we have barriers. How do we work and take care of our parents? You know, how do we mix that in? And that kind of goes back to every family dynamic is different. And some do have caregivers that could divide and handle, but some don't. I'm an only child, so you know, the help for me is that it's a one-man show. So, and I wouldn't be unique. There's a lot of people that have that same problem.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about those situations where maybe there's not a child, there's an only child, and also about the health of the caregiver themselves.
Hey Birmingham, it's your favorite girlfriend, Ebony Steele, back in my hometown. My show, Coffee with America, is now on WOIL TV 47 4 days a week. Catch me and Sasha Rianda Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 8 a.m. You can also see us Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. We're bringing you the latest in lifestyle, food, entertainment, you name it. We'll see you soon.
Hi, it's Shawnee McNeil at South First Bank. This is a great time for you to buy or build a new home, or maybe refinance your present mortgage. Our rates are the lowest they've been in years, and that means saving you money. We've been helping our customers become homeowners in this area for nearly 70 years, and we can make our approvals right here in the office, and that means saving you time. We're located here in downtown Sylacauga. Come in and find South First, a better way to bank.
Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
What do you see? What do you see now? Hunters are required to wear 144 square inches of hunter orange during Alabama's gun deer season. See the difference? Hunter orange saves lives. Wear it. This message brought to you by the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and this station.
Welcome back to the Library Connection. Today we're talking with Barry Curtis, and Barry is an elder care attorney, and we, you know, at the library we have so many good books, and I always turn to a book when I'm going to do an interview, and we had this book called Aging with a Plan, and I've learned so much from this book, and just things that you don't really think about. Sure. We talked a little bit about being prepared, planning, and when there's a caregiver situation and people try to do it privately in their home, we've talked about what happens when the caregiver has something unexpected happen to them. You think you've got your care for your elderly person taken care of, then the caregiver gets sick. We know the caregivers wear out. That ends up being a short term. So if you've planned ahead and you have a backup plan in place for that care, that makes all the difference in the world. But go ahead.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. You need a backup plan. It's just different. It's tough on those caregivers.
It is, and we see the caregivers wear out a lot. And at the point when that happens and somebody says, okay, you know, I know that we've got to turn to long-term care or some other arrangement, there's paperwork that has to be in order. And if the paperwork is in order, it's a much smoother process, isn't it?
It is. A lot of the preparing for that is your assets, what you have acquired through the years, how those assets are titled. It just has a lot to do with who has the authority to handle your affairs. Something as simple as that. And there's a lot of people that have not thought of that ahead of time. And it's a lot of crisis management. A lot of times you only think about it when it's right there imminent and you have to think about it. And what I hope is from this is maybe we let some folks kind of think ahead a little bit. I'll be glad to help them. But I think that they'll feel better, sleep better at night, knowing their affairs are kind of in order.
Oh, I've started making my own list as I've gone through some of these things to think about what would you do in this situation. But and I ran a couple of terms by you, and you said, well, those are kind of interchangeable now. And we talked about durable powers of attorney for health care and then living wills.
The old terminology that, and I say old terminology, the living will meant, and everybody would associate it with, I don't want a ventilator and I don't want a feeding tube, and those were just medical directives. When you go to the hospital, that's one of the first things that they want to know is, do you have a living will? Mm-hmm. They want to know who to talk to. You have give that authority to speak for you on your behalf medically if you can't speak for yourself. That's what that does. So, I mean, if you're able to speak for yourself, you tell the doctor what you want. But in the cases to where mentally you can't or physically you can't, then there needs to be that authority given to someone. And in years past, that terminology was a living will. And it says what you did want and what you didn't want. The medical durable power of attorney that we're talking about now, I know everybody's heard of HIPAA and the privacy. Your Greg, your husband, he does not have access to your medical records unless you've given him that authority. So these the medical durable power of attorneys give your agent, who you select in that document, the authority to look at your medical records, to consult second opinions, to give direction to the medical staff, along with your wants and the direction you want your care to be. And it just gives that authority to someone if you can't do it for yourself.
Well, so something like a DNR order would be covered through your living will, as we
That's correct. So when somebody says living will, you're talking about a medical durable power of attorney.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Now, we talked the other day about when somebody passes away, that ends and a new document has to take over.
That is correct. Don't mistake a power of attorney on the business end of things with a medical durable power of attorney. They are two documents. One takes care of medical, one takes care of business. So you have to have the two powers of attorney to designate that person to help you if you can't. Once death occurs, a power of attorney is non-existent at that time. What you do is your assets turn into your estate at that point. And so you have to probate your estate, and your agent that you've designated in your will steps in and is given letters of testamentary, which gives them the authority to work on your behalf in your estate. So your letters of testamentary are after you pass, your powers of attorney are before you pass, and they are really the same powers.
Okay.
Just one is before death and one is after death. And neither can cross over. So there's extra things that you have to do after death versus while you're living.
And I think that those terms somehow through the years have become kind of interchanged in situations, and they've been kind of muddied for me. So this has been helpful to clear it up.
You've heard people say that you have to probate the will. Mm-hmm. That is the same as probating the estate. Okay. But you can probate an estate without a will, but the law takes over and tells you how you disperse an estate. The will gives specific directions from the deceased themselves. So that is the importance of a will.
Let's talk briefly about conservatorships and guardianships. What's a situation that might need to be addressed?
go back and think about the guardianship and the medical health care durable power of attorney. If you've got a durable power of attorney and you get sick, someone has that authority. If you don't have one, then someone has to be appointed that authority, and that's through probate court. And that would either be a conservatorship or it's a long drawn out process, something that costs a lot. Next of kins have to go through a lot of procedures to get those authorities, where if you plan ahead, it's just a piece of paper that's notarized and witnessed. So the courts can come in, step in and say, we will give that authority to someone, but you have to go through the court procedures to do that. Okay. So it's complicated.
Well, and we know that there are lots of situations. We know that people are living a little bit longer than they used to, and we also know, you and I have talked about, and you mentioned earlier, you're an only child, I have one child. There are situations where couples don't have children, and who do they appoint to manage their business, to take care of their things? So it's all questions that we would do well to plan ahead. And we just have maybe a minute left. Could you address maybe some documents that you think it would be beneficial for people to be able to put their hands on in the event something happened?
Well, I've always said, prior to even being a lawyer, I read it somewhere that I think a prearranged funeral is a good estate plan. I think a living will, as you know it, but a medical health care directive is something that is needed, and a will is needed. The will being how to distribute your assets. And the last thing is a power of attorney. It and the health care directive both step in and give someone the authority to act on your behalf while you're sick. The will takes over after you pass. Those are important documents, very important.
Okay. Well, and another thing that you and I mentioned is a lot of documents are no longer paper documents. There are things that have to be filled out online, and that's a whole other issue of, if you don't have a child or someone who's looking out for you, who's going to help you take care of those things? And so there's just so many issues that need to be addressed that I think an elder care attorney could certainly be able to help someone with.
It would give them direction. I think it'd give them peace of mind. Everybody, after they handle a chore, feels better after they've done that chore. And this is a chore. Planning your estate and your affairs is important.
Well, Barry, we just thank you so much for being with us today. I've got my list ready. I'm going to finish reading this book. And we just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you too, Barry.
I'm glad to help.